Okay, let's unpack this for you. Today, we're diving deep into a question that puzzles many. Why do the Scandinavian countries, consistently rank so highly in terms of social welfare and equality?
Hmm, it's a great question.
We've got a really fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive, including insights from someone who actually spent 3 months recently as a visiting researcher right there at a welfare state research institute in Finland.
Yeah, that perspective is invaluable.
So our mission here is to understand not just what makes their system tick, but why it's so different from other countries and maybe what surprising nuggets of knowledge we can pull out.
Absolutely. Because it's not always what you first assume.
Exactly. You might think it's just about, well, being rich or maybe some inherent cultural thing, right?
That's the common thinking, yeah.
But as we'll discover, the real story is far more complex and maybe even more empowering than you imagine.
Hmm.
You mentioned just now that many common assumptions about Scandinavia's success, they're actually kind of misleading. Can you give us some specific examples from our sources, things that really challenge those ideas about wealth or culture being the main drivers?
Absolutely. I mean, lots of people immediately jump to wealth or, some unique cultural DNA. But get this. The United States, incredibly wealthy, right?
Right.
Yet our sources highlight that its welfare system is actually comparable to countries like, say, Thailand, which is surprising.
Wow, okay. That puts it in
Well,
perspective.
look at Sweden just a century ago. They were so impoverished, they actually borrowed money from Argentina.
No kidding. Yeah.
Argentina.
Yeah.
And the sources, they paint this picture of families even selling children, young women migrating to America as nurses, nannies, just to survive.
Goodness. That's a stark contrast to the image we have now.
Exactly. So if it's not simply wealth, and it's not some innate cultural trait that's always been there, well, the critical question becomes, what is it? What actually made the difference?
That's a powerful setup. So if it's not the usual suspects, what do the sources point to as the fundamental driver? What's behind these advanced welfare states?
Well, if we look at the bigger picture across the sources, the core reason really boils down to one powerful concept. People were able to organize, fight, and ultimately win.
Hmm.
They quite literally managed to turn the pyramid upside down, as one source puts it.
Turning the pyramid upside down.
Oh,
Like that. That's a vivid way to put it. So it wasn't just handed to them on a plate.
Not at all. It was earned.
So what's the key lesson there for other societies? How do they manage that sustained, ongoing collective effort? Especially when we see, like you look at the post-WWII UK, welfare policies get adopted, but then later they can get dismantled. What was different?
I think the crucial difference in the Nordic countries was the continuous collaboration. You had labor movements, political parties, even youth movements, all working together tirelessly. And this created this unshakable baseline of equality. It essentially expanded political democracy into the economic sphere. Economic democracy.
Yeah.
Strikes, for instance, were a common tool and remarkably effective. Finland's an interesting case. They adopted their full welfare state quite late, really, in the 1980s.
Later than others.
Yeah, later than many others, but they ultimately surpassed them. And it seems to be because of this persistent, organized effort, that long-term view.
That's a fascinating point about the nature of the system they built.
Yeah.
Because, early in the 20th century, Marxist and socialist ideas were gaining ground globally.
Right.
Strikes were happening in lots of countries.
Sure.
So what made the Nordic response unique? What made it stick and become so effective?
Yeah, that's key. The critical difference seems to be this deliberate push towards a universal welfare system.
Universal meaning.
Meaning welfare was seen as a human right, not tied to your job or your social status, not like, say, Germany's early Social Security, which was much more profession-based.
Okay, so available to everyone regardless.
Exactly. And labor unions played a huge role here. Crucially, they weren't just fighting for factory workers, the traditional industrial base.
Right.
They actively united across industries. They brought in marginalized groups, immigrant workers, women. They pushed for a system that genuinely included everyone.
That focus on inclusivity is powerful.
Yeah.
But it does raise the question, why did the leaders, the elites, why did they ultimately concede? What leverage did the people have?
Well, a significant factor, according to the sources, was fear. Simple as that sometimes.
Fear.
Yeah. Think about the early 1900s. You've got Russia right next door, the whole specter of class revolution hanging in the air.
Oh, okay. The context matters.
Hugely. Nordic elites, much like Bismarck over in Germany, who brought in social insurance partly out of fear of social unrest, they were motivated. They implemented progressive policies, partly to prevent widespread revolt.
So it wasn't necessarily pure altruism.
Probably not entirely, no. It highlights a really fundamental nugget of knowledge from these sources. Change often comes not just from, benevolent leaders deciding to be nice. It comes from organized pressure from the people.
Right. Empowering citizens to make leaders act.
Precisely.
Agency.
That's a crucial insight. Okay, so this universal welfare system, it sounds powerful in theory, but what does it actually look like on the ground? How does it sort of weave into the fabric of everyday life there?
It's often so ingrained, it's just considered, well, normal. Politicians apparently don't even talk about it much during elections. They prefer the flashy mega projects.
Ah, interesting. So it's just assumed.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But the impact is profound. That principle of universality means nobody gets left behind. Whether you're the child of a CEO or an immigrant worker or a single mother, the system aims to catch everyone.
That sounds, frankly, almost too good to be true for many of us listening. Can you maybe give us a concrete example? How does this play out for an individual? Okay, yeah. Consider the story of Sanna Marin. She became the world's youngest female prime minister in Finland.
Right? I remember that.
Her background was challenging. Alcoholic father, single mother who later married a same-sex partner. She was the first in her whole family to graduate from university, worked at a convenience store.
Wow.
Yet, because of Finland's universal system, she could access quality education, get the support she needed, and look at the path. Mayor at 28, Minister of Transport at 32, Prime Minister at 34.
That's incredible.
But here's the kicker. In Finland, that path is considered, well, normal. Possible for anyone, not some exceptional rags-to-riches miracle story.
That really is eye-opening, the normalization of opportunity.
Hmm.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, social mobility, what does this universal system mean for society as a whole?
Well, it creates a stark contrast, doesn't it? Think about countries like Thailand, where, as our sources point out, parliament is still largely filled with elites. The Nordic model genuinely allows ordinary people to rise, to participate in politics. And that investment, it starts really early. They prioritize free, play-based preschool, making sure kids are ready for school, ready for life, no matter their background.
That early investment seems critical.
It is, especially when you compare it to settings with high poverty and little welfare, where a child's development in those crucial first 5 years can be severely hampered.
So what does that mean in terms of, escaping poverty over generations?
Get this. In Thailand, the sources suggest it can take 7 to 9 generations to escape poverty. That's over 100, maybe 200 years.
Wow. 7 to 9.
In the U.S., it's maybe 5 to 8 generations, still a long time. But in Denmark, just 2 generations.
2?
2. A child born into poverty has a genuinely high chance of becoming middle class within their lifetime or their children's.
How is that even possible? What's the mechanism?
It seems linked to inheritance. In places like Thailand, something like 40% of your wealth, your debt, your connections, it's inherited, passed down. In the Nordic countries, it's only about 18–19%.
That's a massive difference. Less baggage, more opportunity based on merit.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Much less determined by who your parents were.
Okay, so this level of universal support, it sounds incredibly beneficial. But the elephant in the room, for many people, is the cost, right? High taxes. What do the sources say about that? And why are people seemingly okay with paying them?
Yeah, absolutely. The cost is real. Welfare states aren't free. They do require higher taxes. The example given is Finland. An average worker, say a cleaner, might earn the equivalent of 140,000 Thai baht a month before tax.
Okay.
And they might face a 35% withholding tax. So after tax, they take home maybe 100,000 baht.
35% is significant.
It is. But here's what's striking. Our sources note that basic goods, food in Finnish supermarkets, they aren't wildly more expensive than in Thailand. Maybe a bit, but not drastically so.
So where's the value? What are they getting for that 35% that makes it feel worth it?
Well, quite a lot, it seems. Free, high-quality education is a big one. Like, regular neighborhood schools in Finland can apparently outperform top-tier private schools elsewhere.
Right.
A minimum pension for everyone equivalent to maybe 30,000 baht a month, and it can go up to 100,000 baht. Unemployment insurance for up to a year, even sick leave, or get this, rehabilitation pay if you're dealing with something like depression. About 50% of minimum wage, so you can actually recover without financial ruin.
Okay, that's comprehensive.
And the point made strongly in the sources is that Finns are generally happy to pay these taxes. They wouldn't vote to abolish the system. They see it as an investment.
Investment in people.
Exactly. An investment in people, ensuring opportunities are there for everyone, enabling people to rise economically. It's seen as building a stronger society for everyone.
That's a very different mindset, isn't it? Which brings up the contrast.
Hmm.
Why do some societies, like Thailand as mentioned, cling so hard to means testing? This idea that you have to prove you're poor to get help.
It's a great question. In places like Thailand, you have these systems where people in poverty have to jump through incredible hoops, proving they're poor, sometimes even proving their potential, just to get a small amount of aid.
Which must create huge barriers for the people who need it most.
Immense hurdles. And the sources really highlight that a universal approach, like Thailand's own universal old age allowance they brought in after 2011, that was actually very successful. It's far more effective at reaching everyone and means fewer people fall through the cracks.
So universality is actually more efficient in some ways.
It often seems to be, yes.
Oh, wow.
Less bureaucracy and targeting ensures wider coverage. And if we talk numbers just quickly, giving everyone in Thailand free education and a basic income, the estimate is around 200 billion bahts a year.
Which sounds like a lot, but in context.
It's only about 1% of the national budget.
1%?
Roughly, yeah. So the money itself, probably not the biggest obstacle.
That's a powerful statistic. Okay, to bring home that point about collective action again,
Yeah.
can you share that example from Finland, the one about the cleaners? It really illustrates the power dynamics.
Right, the municipal cleaners strike. So these cleaners went on strike for better wages, better contracts, and the impact was immediate and significant. Schools had to close, universities went back to online learning, public services were hit hard.
Okay, so a major disruption. What was the public reaction? Anger. Backlash.
That's the surprising part. Instead of anger or condemnation, there was apparently widespread public support for the union. Encouragement, even. Other municipal employees joined them in solidarity.
Wow. Why do you think that was?
It highlights that these workers, who might be seen as low status in some other societies, are actually recognized as essential in Finland. Their collective action had real teeth. It forced negotiation.
Unlike, say, if bank employees went on strike.
Exactly. A hypothetical bank strike might barely register for most people. This shows that the perceived unimportance of certain jobs in some societies is, frankly, a dangerous illusion. They are essential.
That really drives home the point about recognizing the value of all work. Now, a big question hangs over all this for some people. They hear robust welfare state, high taxes, strong unions, and they think, isn't that anti-capitalist? Isn't that socialism?
Yeah.
How did the sources address that?
Well, it's a common reaction, but the sources are quite clear. Nordic countries are capitalist economies. They have markets, private companies, all of that.
Okay, so what's the argument then?
The argument is that this form of universal welfare actually makes capitalism healthier, more sustainable.
Healthier. How so?
By ensuring that baseline of equality and opportunity, it creates genuinely fairer competition. Think back to Santa Marin again. Her ability to rise, that was a direct result of a system that didn't let her background completely dictate her future.
So it levels the playing field somewhat.
Exactly. This model, it seems, tries to address the inherent problems within capitalism, things like excessive capital accumulation, massive inequality, by refining the system itself, not necessarily abolishing it.
Refining, not replacing.
Right. The ultimate goal isn't about making a tiny few incredibly rich. It seems to be about ensuring better lives for all humans within that capitalist framework.
So it's not about dismantling capitalism, but maybe making it work better for more people.
Yeah.
If this model demonstrably leads to better lives, what's the path forward? For a country like Thailand, maybe, or any nation looking to improve social welfare, what are the concrete steps?
Well, the term welfare state itself is broad, right? Canada's healthcare has private hospitals with public funding. The UK's NHS is largely state-owned. There's flexibility. But for Thailand, based on these sources, the most critical first step seems to be embracing a universal system, moving away decisively from means testing, from this idea of welfare as charity or handouts.
So ditching the proving poverty approach.
Yes. The current system, whatever its intentions, is just inefficient. It leaves too many needy people overlooked because they can't navigate the bureaucracy or meet the proof requirements. Universality first.
That's a clear first step. But how does a society actually get there? Especially if, as you said, it won't just come from leaders deciding it's a good idea. What kind of action is needed?
This is where it gets really interesting and maybe challenging. Our sources strongly emphasize progress won't come from the benevolence of capitalists or political leaders just handing it down.
It has to come from below.
It has to come from collective action, from organization by the people themselves. Look at the recent strikes by Thai platform workers, the delivery
Ah,
riders.
yes, that was
It
significant.
was the first major strike like that in, 46 years since the October 6th massacre. And it shows that even highly decentralized, arguably vulnerable groups can organize and create change when they act together.
That's a powerful contemporary example. Okay, so we've established the money isn't the biggest hurdle, maybe 1% of the budget for transformative change. Collective action is key. What's the biggest obstacle then? Why doesn't it just happen?
The biggest hurdle identified is something called status quo bias.
Status quo
Yeah,
bias.
it's this tendency we all have to accept the current state of society as just normal,
Yep.
unchangeable. Even when it's deeply problematic or unfair,
You just get used to it.
we get used to it. And this bias helps explain something quite puzzling that the sources touch on. Why, for example, office workers earning maybe 30,000 baht a month might inexplicably side with the super rich earning 300,000 baht rather than with the people struggling on 3,000 baht.
Even though their own economic reality is much closer to the lower end.
Exactly. Despite being much closer in income and daily struggles, it's that bias towards accepting the existing hierarchy, even when it doesn't serve you. Overcoming that inertia, that acceptance of normal, is huge.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening? This deep dive into the Nordic model, it really shows us that a more equitable society isn't some pipe dream. It's not exclusive to certain cultures or only possible with extreme wealth.
No, it seems to be the result of sustained collective action, a clear vision for universal support, and critically, a societal shift away from just accepting extreme inequality as inevitable.
The path to a better future, whether in Thailand or anywhere else, it seems to start with realizing our collective power, demanding a system that truly serves all its citizens, not just a few at the top.
And maybe consider this final thought, something provocative to chew on. If a country like Thailand faces massive inequality where the top 1% holds something like 67% of the wealth,
67%, that's huge.
it's far more than even places known for inequality like Chile, where the top 1% holds maybe 25%. If your status quo is that unequal, isn't it already kind of on the brink, already fragile?
That's a challenging question.
And if it is, why are we so resistant to changing it towards something more universal, more inclusive? Why the fear that that kind of change will destroy something that's already so incredibly skewed and arguably broken?